Counterpoint. I am your host, James. Just with me is John Cameron. And man, John, it's been one of those days. I almost called myself John Cameron. What was I going to call you?
James Just. I'm James Just, author extraordinary. No, I'm John Cameron, and I'm happy to be here. Where are we?
We're down here at Access Sacramento's TV studios, and we're having a good time tonight, and it's gonna be a good show for you tonight. So, John, we talk a lot about misinformation, disinformation, and
malinformation.
And malinformation. Oh, what did they call this new one now? I'm forgetting. I'll remember it before too long.
Forgotten information.
But tonight, we're going to start off with how the U.S. military was helping to spread anti-vax conspiracies at the same time they were complaining about the spread of anti-vax conspiracies. John, there's some things that make you just want to kind of grab somebody by the neck. Mm-hmm. But who do you grab by the neck?
All of them. Grab them all. Grab them all. We're penal colony. We need a penal colony. And just send all these crazies to it. So here's the story, folks. At the beginning of the, well, not the beginning, once vaccines started to develop and be rolled out, while most of the U.S. government and its lackeys were suppressing illegally anything to do with, let's say, COVID or origination from a lab, anything to do with the efficacy or the fact that these vaccines might have been a little rushed and might not be perfect and there could be some harms to them. And most of the U.S. government was suppressing those things. The U.S. military was conducting a Psyop operation to spread anti-vax conspiracy theories about Chinese vaccines, saying that, they were, because they were going to provide them to Muslim countries, and they have a lot of border countries that are Muslim, and are trying to gain influence in Muslim countries. They set up false accounts on Twitter and other places, and said that the vaccines the Chinese were producing had swine in them. In other words, parts of pigs were used in their manufacture. And they had this coming out of the Philippines, a fake account out of the Philippines, because the Philippines was starting to lean toward China a little bit, and the American government didn't like that. So they used disinformation, misinformation, psyops, basically, what they do to take down an enemy during battle, on the poor people in the Philippines, so they'd be afraid to use the Chinese vaccine and would use U.S. vaccines. And it goes on and on and on. That's just the tip of the iceberg. So our U.S. military, which isn't supposed to do anything to anybody other than when we're actively engaged in a war with them. I guess we're engaged in a war with everybody all the time now. So we're trying to influence people's use, purchase, believing in vaccines, so that our pharmaceutical companies could sell more of our good American vaccines to those poor people in the Philippines, because that's what they needed. And anyway, I just got distracted. Sorry, we're having some engineering tune-up going on in the room, folks. So again, just the tip of the iceberg. The idea that we let these clowns do this, and it went on forever until I guess it even got so embarrassing to the powers that be in the Pentagon and the White House that they said, shut it down. And I said, shut it down, and it still went a year longer because these people don't listen to anybody. So that's that story.
Well, that's the scary part. They told it to shut it down. They're just going to keep going anyway.
No, now we got it dialed in now. What do you want? What do you want us to make them afraid of? Yeah.
So the question is, what else are they doing that they've been told to shut down? I mean, that they haven't, or that we don't know about, or how many other times are they spreading the misinformation, the disinformation, the malinformation that they're actually then turning around and complaining about? I mean, this is the just. I don't even know what to call this, John. Nothing that I can say.
I know what to call it. It's government. Let's get rid of them. I mean, people cannot comprehend a world where government doesn't control everything. I mean, now in this country, we didn't worry about elections in this country 50 years ago because we had a lot of freedom. Now, since whoever's in charge takes charge of everything, you know, I mean, what car to buy, what food you can eat.
Yeah, that's actually a good segue to our next question. We've got the media, talking about media disinformation. You know, a lot of these labels that we use, where do they come from? Like the labels of, we're talking about how, you know, the government didn't used to matter. The elections didn't matter a whole lot.
Yeah.
Now, because the activists have gotten in charge, we get the far left.
The radical
and the far
activists.
Right. And we're
not just activists.
But yeah, so where do these labels come from? Because now people like, Joe Rogan is now considered far right. And, you know, Bill Maher, they're considering far right. Here in California,
Bill Maher is a classic liberal. Bill Maher is a classic progressive. Bill Maher made his living picking on conservatives in this country, the millions of dollars he's worth. He's a hedonist. He likes to get high. He is a classic liberal in the greatest sense. But because he's pointed out the foolishness of some of the stuff that his own beloved Democratic Party is behind, they now label him far right. And this has especially happened in Europe. Because what happens is people who are in lamestream and also social media believe that they are normal in their thought process. They think they're middle of the road. They are by, what is it, like 90+% of them are by any means, by any measurement, far left to far left. So, and many of them are far, far left because they are ivory tower folks. They've never had to make a payroll in their life. So most people that go into journalism schools are from very wealthy families because they go into a field where they know they can't make a great living. And so mommy and daddy have separated them from reality. So in Europe, when the radical left was crushed in the recent elections, they called it a win by the far right. So some of these people are far out, and some of them are far right. I'm talking like fascist, but very, very few. Most of these people are about what, in their thinking, what you would call a Goldwater Republican, right? Pretty innocuous. And many of them are basically libertarians, because that's what the Liberal Party is in Europe. It is classic liberal. Yet the left, because they're radical left, don't call them liberals, labeled everybody far right. And the same thing is true in our country.
Yeah, and the question I kind of ask now is to people, when people start talking about the far left or the far right or whatever it is, I says, okay, so if they're a left person, who's to the left of you? And if they're a right-wing person, who's to the right of you? Because I can tell lots of people, right? Thomas Massey and Rand Paul are to the right of me, right? And to the left of me, I can name 100,000 people, right? Bill Maher, we can go down the laundry list of people who are to the left of me. I have no problems with that. But if you're a far left, if you are generally far left or generally far right, who's to the right, who's to the left of you? And you find out who's to the left of these people, and it's not normal human beings.
Mao Zedong,
Yeah.
Kim Il-jung. I mean, no, and the religious fanaticism of environmentalism, which I think we're going to talk about in a little bit, is the same thing.
Week, John.
Oh, that was last week?
That was last week.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's last week. All right, but you know, John, you and I are going to take a break here for a few minutes because Richard has his own thoughts on the administrative state.
Just a few minutes?
Richard goes on a rant, so you and I are going to take a break, and you get to hear what Richard has to say this week.
Hi, this is Richard Fields with this week's Report from the Fields. My comments today owe 100% credit to Jeffrey Tucker of Brownstone Research. He is one of the most astute analysts of the intersection of politics and the economy writing today. As a result, his work is widely censored. He is the painstaking researcher who pieced together a credible theory of why then President Trump did a 180 in the early days of the pandemic, pivoting from "it's just the flu" to lockdowns, masking, and elevating Fauci to rock star health guru. As part of that research, he has come up with a very incisive way of describing how government and big business actually work. We've all heard the phrase deep state. It's a term that is alternately ridiculed as conspiracy theory by legacy media and then described as a very good thing by the New York Times. Tucker goes deeper in his analysis and defines terms better than any person I have seen anywhere else. He defines the deep state as the intelligence and security agencies that coordinate closely with law enforcement agencies. They operate largely without media scrutiny. Included would be the CIA, DHS, FBI, NSA, CISA, NSC, and more than a dozen others, along with their government-funded foundations, think tanks, and private sector cutouts. Deep means clandestine, and that's the way they operate. The middle state is otherwise known as the administrative state. Over 400 different civilian letter agencies with 2 million plus employees who, because of civil service protection and union rules, cannot be fired. The infamous Dr. Fauci is a prime example. The president can appoint a few hundred agency heads, but the actual institutional knowledge and power resides with the career bureaucrats who mostly do whatever they want or nothing at all. The political appointees are here today, gone tomorrow. The permanent bureaucrats do what they want and barely pay attention to their politically appointed bosses. Tucker goes on to describe what he calls the shallow state. This is where the turnstile between big government and big business becomes the most obvious. The word state is effectively expanded to include businesses operating at the pleasure of the state, whether on government contracts, use of regulations to stymie their competitors, or using the threat of regulatory extortion to tell them that they must do whatever the government masters want them to do if they want to stay in business. The term turnstile refers to high-ranking employees in regulated industries moving fluidly from their businesses to the agency regulating their business and then back again. Governmental contractors are most obvious in the defense sector. Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, and General Dynamics, etc. The FDA keeps pharmaceutical companies in lockstep, Moderna, Pfizer, Eli Lilly, and so forth. Pharma's gigantic advertising budgets make sure legacy media never blows the whistle on them. Witness the rapid FDA approval of COVID vaccines, which were not effective as claimed and had serious side effects. They were not actual vaccines either, but gene modification treatments. Many other large companies that don't come to mind as government contractors, in fact, are. Amazon Web Services has upwards of $20 billion in contracts with the NSA, the U.S. Navy, and is the host of the Joint Warfighting Cloud Capability contract. Their product search algorithms disfavor government disapproved products and services. The dairy lobby works with the U.S. Department of Agriculture to prevent competition from raw milk producers. The government mouthpiece, New York Times, chimes in, calling raw milk a right-wing hobby horse, when anyone with any sense of history can tell you that consuming raw milk is a lefty thing. Even family doctors were paid bounties for pushing the COVID vaccine. Microsoft has upwards of $32 billion in defense contracts. Its LinkedIn division helped push lockdowns. How about that? Academia, which directly or indirectly receives most of its funding from the government, enthusiastically pushed lockdowns to the educational detriment of at least 2 classes of students. And of course, the whole monetary system is used to levy what is effectively a 2% sales tax on everyone, while playing favorites with its too-big-to-fail financial institutions. Whether it's the deep state, the middle state, or the shallow state, we're all enthralled to the state. It's not a good thing. Sooner or later, in the final stages of empire, it ends in collapse. We may be getting closer than you might think. That's this week's Report from the Fields. I'm Richard Fields. See you again next week.
Thank you, Richard, for that. You know, John, the administrative state is a big problem all over the place. And, you know, here in California, we've got the consequences of that administrative state. California's looking to ban reusable grocery bags again. Those plastic bags that they now might charge us 10 cents for. Yeah, that didn't work. Imagine that. And then, and so now we've got, they're passing plastic bag bans, or they want a plastic bag ban, which I can get the desire behind it, but if you're someone like who's got ADHD or some other type of, you know, you're never going to remember your bag. I have yet to remember to bring a grocery bag to the store, and it's not because I don't think of it. It's just it never.
A question. I didn't dive real far into this one. Are they going to ban the throwaway paper bags as well, or those will be available?
Well, they're going to be available, but they're going to cost money now.
Well, they were costing money before.
Yeah,
so the same.
But they also want to ban, John, you know those little one-use bags you get at the meat department? They want to ban those as well. Now, they're just trying to ban everything.
So here's the deal. How stupid are they? I mean, literally, you could have seen this coming. The idea that what we're going to do is we're going to sell you a thicker plastic bag so it doesn't go into the landfill, right? So they could have realized from the number of people that currently use their own bags and go into a grocery store, they could have extrapolated exactly how many people were going to go forward using the free bags. The number would be 0, because if they were going to use reusable bags, they'd already be using usable bags, and giving them reusable bags, right, isn't going to change their behavior. So, right when this happened, we did predict it, didn't we? I don't. If not, let's go back and edit a long time ago show where I predicted it. So,
I'm sure we did.
So what has happened is the new bags, right, are so thick that they basically don't ever degrade. Well, not ever degrade. I mean, a little aside here. I'm supposed to put all my green waste in a like food. I'm supposed to scrape it out of the container, clean the container, put it in the trash. I mean, and I do, of course. Of course, I follow the rules. But I put poop in the trash. So I'm putting dog poop, not my own poop. I don't poop in bags, folks. I put dog poop in the trash. And I asked somebody the logical about it, and they said, well, no, the dog poop's in a plastic bag. Well, so that goes in the trash, and that's okay, but it's biodegradable. Besides that, I buy dog poop bags that are biodegradable because I care about the environment. I mean, none of this stuff makes sense. Absolutely none of it makes sense. I'm starting to think that on things like this, especially California, their desire is simply to drive everybody insane so that they I don't know what the purpose of that would be, but I'm starting to think that that's what their goal is.
Well, what they are actually doing, John, as we kind of move on to the next one, is the exodus. They are driving people out. Is actually what is happening. Is the number of people who are leaving California. We've been talking about this for a couple of years.
Yeah.
How you know the roots of our communities are actually getting just ripped out. I mean, we started with things like AB5, and it is just now continued, and it's accelerating with these minimum wage laws. And now the unions now want a $30 minimum wage because a $20 minimum wage works so well for.
Yeah. Well, they want 30 because their wage negotiations are based upon the minimum wage. So the higher the minimum wage, the higher the union wage. So, but California doesn't care because a lot of people with no income and no papers have come over the border, and they're on Medi-Cal. So they have a bunch of future citizens waiting to actually, and since these people have skills, especially in construction, that when the whole state collapses under the weight of the bureaucracy, there'll be people here who actually know how to rebuild it. But I have I have a story about how bad this is, and I think I might have told it before, so if you've watched this, seen it before, studio audience, just say grandpa and go to sleep for a while. So I know a guy who's can't give you his name, he's a fairly famous guy, he's a financial advisor, he has a lot of high wealth individuals. Some of those were major movers and shakers in state government, high level bureaucrats, judges, all the rest of that stuff. So what do they do when they retire? They take their massive state pensions, which I think it's like for, I mean, even for a school teacher, it's like $90,000 a year if they work 30 years. And they leave the state of California to avoid the 12% income tax on their retirement income. So these are people who made a living off the fat of the land, making all this crazy stuff happen. But when they retire, they go to Idaho.
Yeah, well, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
You'd be dumb not to.
No. So, but it's actually, the exodus would be worse due to high interest rates. Lots of people in California would love to sell their houses, but there's nobody who can afford to buy their $1.5 million 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in each sack because interest rates are so high they can't qualify for the loan. So if interest rates were back down to 2%, 2.5%, the exodus would be crazy high.
Well, look who's leaving. It's the rich and the upper middle class.
Yeah.
That's who's leaving because no one else can afford to leave.
Yeah.
That's part of the problem.
Nobody can afford to retire here unless they have a public employee pension or are statistically like top 5%, probably top 3% in income in the United States. It's that simple.
Yeah, yeah. And John, they just keep doing more and more. Newsom and Los Angeles have decided that they want to ban cell phones in school. Now, I know instinctively a lot of people say, well, okay, fine, you probably shouldn't have cell phones in schools. But, they're using an excuse that we talked about, a month ago, that, the cell phone does not actually create social harm.
No.
It does not hurt teenagers.
It is neutral.
It is neutral.
Yeah.
It is a neutral factor. The studies have shown it, but yet, because you've got people around, it sounds good, and it's the same argument. Like
Virtue signaling.
Virtue signaling. Remember, back in the 70s and 60s and 70s, it was rock and roll was ruining the lives of teenagers. Then it was TV. And before all that, it was radio.
To tell you how old, I'm not quite old enough, but if you watch the Ed Sullivan Show, when Elvis Presley got on, because he swung his hips, they only showed him on TV from the waist up.
Yeah.
So that's Elvis Presley. How vanilla can you get, folks?
And so this is just a constant. It's these people have to have something to scare you with.
Yeah.
I think that's ultimately what it is. And if you're scared, then you will submit to their control.
But they're going to fix it because what they're doing in some places, they're making them put away their smartphones, but they're giving them other phones. Giving them other phones, like basically flip phones to use, in case they got to get a hold of their mommy and daddy, or their mommy and daddy has to get a hold of them. This is insanity, folks. This is insanity. Because, again, the study, may I just 30 seconds on the study. The best study that's out there says that people who are isolated socially can be isolated socially face-to-face or online. Most people who are active socially online are actually active socially in person. So there's nothing there. And yeah, there's some lunatics online, but the government's most of those lunatics, especially the people in the state of California who want to protect kids, don't let them listen to what the state of California has to say.
No, they want to protect kids. I don't think they really want to protect kids. And as we found out, talked about at the top of the show, it's the government that's actually spending a lot of this misinformation, malinformation. And so they're doing exactly what it is they're complaining about yet again. It's something we have bounced or bent around about for years here. So we're gonna move on to a new topic. Letitia James. The appeals court. If I'm trying to wrap my head around this one again, John. The appeals court ruled that her letter to, I forget what the letter was to, but it was a very ominous letter, essentially threatening Trump supporters with future legal actions if they continue to support Trump.
So chilled speech. We're protected in this country by this thing called the Constitution, a couple of big sheets of paper, magical document. I'm surprised it doesn't fly around making gold. Letitia James did not like a speaking group. There's some, of course, the press labels it far right, bunch of lunatics that travel the country, and many times they speak at churches. And so she said they're inciting violence, and violence will come of it, and violence, 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 violence. And she said, I don't want you to have that meeting. And they said, au contraire, First Amendment right, we can have any kind of meeting we want. And she didn't send any banning letters to pro-Palestinian groups who called for the death of everyone in Israel. She didn't send ominous letters to anybody except for those who she would call Trump supporters. I mean, some of those people are so crazy that I think even Trump would reject them. But it's their right to be crazy, folks. This is the United States of America. So, and this is in New York. It was so, her letter that she wrote was so patently, so obviously chilling of free speech that a court in New York State said that she's in violation of law and basically brought her up on charges for it. Yeah. And so she rejects their finding, and she's going to appeal it.
Yeah, she just shrugged her shoulders. Yeah.
Shrug her shoulders. Yeah, if I'm going to keep doing it, I'm going to appeal it. Yeah.
How many times do we talked about this? How these people in government get to violate the constitutional rights of average American citizens, and literally nothing ever happens. Not even, you don't even have to pay the price of a parking ticket.
Oh, I remember the worst part of it. She says, because she's a DA, she not only has qualified immunity, by law she has absolute immunity. And you can't, I mean, somebody who's a DA, basically, they can lie, cheat, and steal, send somebody to prison, and they can be executed. And that DA isn't held responsible.
Well,
that's how bad it is.
Because these Democrats complain about, the president wanting absolute immunity, and they're correct. You shouldn't have absolute
Nobody
immunity.
should.
Yeah,
Nobody
but
should.
they want absolute immunity when it comes to their...
Only if they're a bureaucrat. Everybody else is, yeah.
Everybody else gets, the bureaucrats, the left-leaning electeds get to have immunity, while the rest of us have to pay parking tickets for parking in front of your house. And that's the annoying spot. So, John, I think we are just about out of here tonight. We are out of here. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for watching. Please remember to love everybody.
Love everybody.
Have a good night.
Left, right, middle, upside down, back, all those sides. Yeah, love them all.